Season 4 is disappointing, but it's for reasons outside the supposed uninvolvement of Aaron Magruder. It's disappointing because it's the perfect personification of what the Boondocks was becoming. Keep in mind that people were already mixed about Season 3. Season 4 is just a muddier extension of that. Don't violate me, I like Season 3, allow me. The Stinkmeaner episode is bad, but they've been shamelessly rehashing Stinkmeaner since Season 2. To the point where every old character in the show feels like some variation of its traits. I don't like I Dream of Siri, but each Boondock season made more and more of a point of making a running joke of Grandad's dating habits and... alright. They were parodying reality TV shows since Season 2. Like, the idea that they do an episode on the Kardashians isn't foreign to me. These are things already plaguing the Boondocks show. Season 4 just got caught up in the middle of it. One half is rehashing the worst of what the Boondocks had to offer, and the other presents interesting ideas but never truly commits to it or follows up on them in any meaningful way. The world feels small and uninteresting, and the cast has been cut down significantly. To me, that's the problem with Season 4. It's the culmination of the Boondocks imploding on itself, getting so caught up in parodies and shameless attempts to replicate what was done before. Season 3 of the Boondocks, believe it or not, has its fair share of critics too. I've seen a number of people call it underwhelming. This impatience for another season of the show, I mean, like, it's kind of no wonder why the impact was so flaccid and poorly received as it was. It's kind of complicated. The issues with Season 4 are far greater than expectations being too high or public relations being severed. After all, there's a mountain of evidence to suggest that Aaron Magruder was more involved in Season 4 than meets the eye. He has photos with Studio Mer in their initial meetings. His name is on certain scripts. There's references to the comic strip. There's references to things he loves. There's episodes without writing credits. And Regina King comments in 2012 that he was at least involved in the first 4 episodes. Angela Nittle isn't even some random person. Aaron knew her before the syndication of the strip. He left a statement in both of her books and even drew for her book The Broke Diaries. For free, they're gonna go as far to adapt it into a TV show together. She knows Aaron and the Boondocks probably better than you. You didn't even read the comic strip. A lot of the names on Season 4 were either long-time members or continue to work with Aaron till this day, even on the reboot. So the argument that Season 4's flaws bank solely on Aaron Magruder's lack of involvement is, in my opinion anyway, a bit disrespectful to not only the people that were brought on by Aaron, but feels so general that any constructive conversation about Season 4's direction lacks any semblance of nuance or understanding of its actual strengths and shortcomings. I say all of this to say that I don't actually think everything about Season 4 is bad or even incompetently made. I actually quite enjoy a number of things the season tries to implement, which never really gets discussed because it's drowned in this conversation of Magruder ain't involved. Like, it's doing too much. Why would Michael B. Jordan be confused that Aaron was fired if Aaron didn't write Pretty Boy Flizzy and ask him to be on it? Like, how could Aaron have written Breaking Grandad if he didn't at least have awareness of the, Freeman's going broke plot? Do you see how when you actually put the pieces together, it doesn't even make any sense?
How did you talk about it? They just cut you off. Like, you don't really...
I don't even sure if I'm allowed. Yeah, wait, hang on. And if you read the leaks from Sony, you can see that they'll... My issue isn't the original idea. Like, the idea of Huey giving up his radical ways in wake of a black president sounds really stupid on paper, but they managed to make it work. You can make any idea work if you have the vision for it. So my problem is that they didn't. And it's a shame because there was clear inspiration. And in the end, all they really needed was a bit more creativity and a lot more ambition. The purpose of this video is to pitch an idea for the Boondocks Season 4 for an episode that perhaps serves to address many of the issues surrounding how these episodes are framed. Before I do that though, there's a few ground rules I need to establish. 1, I can't deviate from the original premise of Season 4, that being the Freeman family goes broke. This would defeat the purpose of the whole video, as it's supposed to be an exploration into how this concept could have been better executed. You see, the premise of Season 4 is actually pretty interesting. Maybe not the concept of the characters going broke, but a major facet of the 4th season is about the working class. A lot of the episodes are exploring class struggles. The main character of the show is a radical leftist. In many ways, it should just write itself. A lot of the concepts in Season 4 speak to things that Huey brings up in the comic strip. In that sense, this plot thread isn't that alien to the Boondocks. In many ways, it works for emphasizing a core facet of what the Boondocks was all about. The exploitation of Grandad on a commercial, financial, and systematic level. The 4th season of the Boondocks is about exploitation. Exploiting women, exploiting black women, exploiting suffering, exploiting struggle. It's a very strong premise conceptually. It's just not that creatively utilized, and to be honest, it isn't really used in many funny ways. 2, no bringing back old characters that they haven't introduced in the show. That means yes, Caesar, he gonna have to stay in his graveyard. Look, I want him back too, but character introductions are a really cheap way of creating new circumstances and situations, and it goes against what I'm trying to communicate. The problem isn't a need for new characters, it's about more creativity in using the existing ones you have.
You might have to get a job, Granddad.
Why do I have to get a job? Why can't y'all get jobs?
Child labor laws, unsafe workplaces, really small hands.
That's garbage. Your generation is just lazy, that's all.
Again, a huge part of season 4 is class and exploitation. While these are adult issues to a degree, to argue the Boondocks hasn't explored adult issues with children in the show is ridiculous. The fundraiser is about selling drugs, but they creatively tackle it with Riley and the school candy bars. The Block is Hot is about exploitation under capitalism, but it's tackled with Jasmine's lemonade stand. The Red Bull is about the relationship between US, China and war, but it's played up as this over-the-top anime kickball game. The Boondocks conceptually was always about the children, but continually was about very real issues in the world framed from the perspective of these children. Grandad didn't even have a bio on the original Boondocks site. To argue they can't do anything with these characters because they're children, to me, screams creative bankruptcy and flies in the face of everything the Boondocks has been up till this point. So the first step to improving season 4 is to make better use of the characters, specifically the younger cast, in order to emphasize these very same points. There's an interesting episode where Huey suggests that Grandad gets a job, in order to help him with money, and the person he calls to help him is Tom. This is an interesting idea because of what Tom is supposed to represent.
I had to call in the big guns. Someone who loved capitalism and smiled at giving away the bulk of his free day to the men.
Hey, Huey. I came over as soon as I paid my tax.
This is a very big part of Tom's character, but to be specific, it's also a very big part of Jasmine's. Jasmine has the exact same mind frame as Tom, down from a misunderstanding of her own blackness, the fetishization of European traits, and the glorification of the hard work narrative.
Jasmine, this is stupid. You're being exploited.
You'll never get anywhere in this world without doing a fair day's work for a fair day's pay.
Because of this, you can effectively have Jasmine serve the same narrative purpose as Tom, but for Huey. Because for every interesting idea season 4 presents, it never really commits to it. It's constantly presenting and dropping its ideas. It happens in The New Black, it happens here. Like Tom gets scrapped a quarter into the episode and he's never seen again. For example, a setup for this episode could be Jasmine finding out that Huey's poor because he doesn't have money for lunch, and imposing it on herself to push Huey to work to help him out of his financial slump. Huey, again, I have to say it, Huey is a radical leftist. The idea of throwing Huey into a workplace is a recipe for disaster, and that's exactly why it's a good setup. It was also a very sincere thing for Jasmine to try and do, despite the fact that Huey would be really against it. In the comic strip, there's a series of strips that detail Grandad becoming a census taker, or seen as... I don't really know how to pronounce that, and Huey getting frustrated about it because he's a revolutionary. And then he dips and he leaves Huey the job, and he's feverishly trying to find ways to rationalize it. Huey does this all the time. There's a series of strips where Caesar wants to go sledding, and Huey's finding excuses not to do it related to politics, just because he's scared. There's an arc where Huey's supposed to mow the lawn, and he goes, you see, because the revolution, the grass is nature, and I'm imposing societal will, and it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit, but that's why it's funny. It's not compromising what Huey believes, but it's framing it in a way that's actually funny. So while doing this job, you can have Huey do something very similar. He's trying to rationalize it. He's like, you see, the revolution can't collect government data. And Jasmine's like, yeah, whatever, hurry up. So Huey and Jasmine's plotline has been established. Huey reluctantly working as a census taker under Jasmine. So what's Riley and Grandad gonna do? An underplayed element of season 4 is once again an idea introduced that doesn't really go anywhere. It's the idea of Ruckus being a politician. In an interview regarding the Uncle Ruckus movie, Aaron talks a bit about this idea. I came up with Ruckus before the Tea Party, before Herman Cain. But in the post-Obama era, half the country became Uncle Ruckus. The world is more polarized and extreme. Ruckus embodies that. I remember watching CNN when Herman Cain was the frontrunner for the Republican Party, and they did a segment on whether Herman Cain was Uncle Ruckus. I couldn't believe what I was watching. When Ruckus was first introduced, he felt like a funny fringe character. He was bizarre and really extreme. Now he feels like he represents a lot of that right-wing ideology. It's really crazy. The times have caught up to him. I bring this up because outside the opening scene of Good Times, this is never really brought up again. I get what Aaron's going for, but it's hard to be sold on this idea when it's completely dropped after this episode. Ruckus goes back to working odd jobs and babysits the kids. Why? It's like they were afraid to commit to the idea because it's strayed too far from what people recognize from Ruckus. And it's this half-hearted effort that makes every attempt season 4 makes at presenting a new idea feel so empty. It's just bad. So instead, we're gonna follow up on that plot point. We're gonna have Ruckus take Grandad to a conference. Ruckus explains how he needs an old black man to co-sign what he's saying so white people don't feel bad. Grandad's reluctant to do it at first, but turns at the sight of money. You're essentially left with a series of gags of Ruckus saying some really outrageous shit, and Ruckus turning to him to co-sign it.
Color folks supposed to do what color folks did in the past. Die about age 53. You're done. Leave it over to the white man to take care of.
Nobody want to hear that shit, you black fool.
And a bunch of white people okaying it because there's a token black guy. It can be seen as a commentary on the Candace Owens types and the role they play in politics. I'd like to believe you guys are enjoying the video right now. It's a really creative idea, and I've been working on this one for a couple months now. Support the artists involved. They are incredible people. I wish I could draw like them. Oh man, it's been great. Support them. If you want to see more of this sort of stuff, support the Patreon, the Ko-Fi. I'm not gonna take too much of your time. All right, guys, let's keep going.
That whole thing, you know, Riley was really constructed to be a satire on contemporary black popular culture and contemporary hip-hop music and the glorification of crime and what have you.
So yeah, you slow it way down and chop it into bits, and then you get this.
That leaves Riley. Riley sucks. Riley's at his absolute worst in season 4, which really sucks because he's the most quotable character in the show. Most people's favorite season is season 2, and in my opinion, I mean, this is me, I'm just speaking personally, Riley's like the best character in that season. A big facet of Riley's character is that he's a satire on contemporary black culture. That's kind of his whole deal. But one of the many ways the Boondocks contextualizes him is by making him realize that he hates the circumstances he throws himself into, and he doesn't actually know what he wants. He still has a moral compass and he's humanized in a lot of episodes. While Riley says some of the most, stupid, offensive stuff imaginable, it's satire. And Riley's hypocrisy and juxtaposition from his desires of what he wants and his reaction when he actually gets it is a huge part of his actual character. He isn't a thug, he's just a kid. And it's the most consistent part of his character from the strip to the show. Season 4 ironically feels like a caricature of Riley, because all he really does is say stupid stuff and call things gay.
Solve, nigga. Yeah, we'll make it, nigga. You think you the only one in this house who knows chemistry?
How hard could it be?
Analyze, nigga. Your call, nigga. Okay, Huey, I see you. Maybe you ain't so gay after all. Huey, it's gay. Even worse, it's homosexual. I'ma get shot by a gay dude. How embarrassing.
I've gone on record saying that I don't really agree with people that simplify Riley's character to the guy that call people gay a lot, because I think it does a disservice to the character, and he has a bunch of funnier lines and moments. So to watch the character that once justified this defense devolve into that exact simplification it's kind of annoying. It kind of undermines my whole argument. Riley's a character that needs to be contextualized with some semblance of humanity for him to be fun. It's these childlike traits that make him a fun character. With all that said, I kind of want a story that humanizes Riley. So we're gonna leave Riley alone, and that's kind of just the idea. Most of Riley's episode concepts amount to him wanting something and realizing it's not what he wanted in the moment. So to ride off that idea, let's make Riley throw a house party. Everyone's out of the house, so it just feels like something he would do. If anyone's been to a house party, then you already know. House parties when you're poor, I mean, they're kind of the worst thing. You don't own anything, nothing is disposable, you can't even enjoy yourself. And so the idea is forcing Riley to deal with this. He has to play housemaid at his own house party. You can do a bunch of gags with this and even introduce new long-running characters for the season. I mean, it's Adult Swim, so you can really mess them up if you want to. Now, the point I'm making with this video is that you can do a lot with the existing cast with this concept. So much of the 4th season is on Grandad, and while in retrospect, it's kind of bittersweet. Moving forward, this ain't it. There are 10 episodes in season 4. 1 is a Tom episode, 1 is a Huey episode, 1 is a Riley episode, and every other episode is about Grandad. Having some episode variety is important, especially when they're character driven. Freedom Ride or Die is honestly an incredible episode. It's funny, it feels straight out of season 2. And it's a Grandad episode. The problem isn't Grandad inherently. The problem is that they relied on him too much and used him in really boring ways. You see, this is an issue permeating the entire Boondocks series, but it had this really serious issue with repetition. From the Grandad dating episodes to the Stinkmeaner knockoffs ad nauseum, to the abundance of parodies. Something that doesn't help season 4 is that it's very predictable. It feels like it's just going with the motions. And this is more than the season just repeating season 3 songs or the art style not changing as significantly as before. It's stuff like reducing the show to its most tired and played out ideas.
The owner of the house?
You ain't the owner of the house. Eddie Wansler's the owner of this house, motherfucker.
Yes, well, I'm Robert Freeman, civil rights.
I know who you are, motherfucker. I know exactly who you are.
What the fuck do you want? I was hoping to use the bathroom. There's a bathroom downstairs, motherfucker! Yes, but I would prefer to use... I prefer you get the fuck out of my face, nigga! Are we about to have a nigga moment? Are we about to have a nigga moment?
All of this feels so tone deaf and phoned in. Like, is that Eddie Murphy? I don't even like Eddie Murphy. What the fuck? That don't even make no sense. Season 4 feels like it makes absolutely no attempt to distinguish itself from other seasons, despite the fact that it introduces what should be fairly new, big ideas. Like, I've brought up this point before, but Season 4 is essentially a soft reboot for the show. It really drastically shifts up the premise the Boondocks was founded on. For almost a decade, the Boondocks was about black people navigating a crazy white neighborhood. But now it's about a poor black family and their struggles to make ends meet. Not to knock this idea inherently, because I do think it has a number of benefits, but in execution, it constantly feels like the domestication of the narrative limits what each episode can do, when I think they could have done a better job at using it to inform the season both visually and narratively. Season 4 is a soft reboot for the show. It's reintroducing the cast in a new circumstance. That's why even in the Good Times episode, it opens with Huey reintroducing the setting and the characters. A soft reboot's introduction serves as the new starting point for the new people watching. But Season 4 feels like it makes no attempt to actually invest people in its world, because it's ironically rehashing so many ideas from previous seasons ad nauseum. Despite spending 3 seasons in Woodcrest, our understanding of where things are relative to each other is actually fairly minuscule. Like, where's the cinema in relation to the Freeman home? Or Bay von Hausen, or even the Dubois family? The plot point of Jasmine forcing Huey to work under her as a census taker isn't just some tired excuse to involve the characters. It's an opportunity to properly reintroduce this world to the audience. Like, show us the Green Gardens. Like, ain't this supposed to be a white neighborhood? Like, where did black people come from? Like, you know, you gotta look into that. Anything to just visually spice things up. Every season of the Boondocks went through some radically different art shift, but I'd argue that, you know, strong storyboarding and direction is why certain sequences are more memorable. Okay, for instance, the show of Huey about to punch Bushido, or even every time they show a character at the oak tree. The tone is different and the visuals reflect that. Keeping with the trend of previous seasons, I think the Boondocks could have benefited from a stylistic innovation. If you want to reintroduce the world of this show, you can't spend 50% of your runtime in the living room. At least, not without doing something different. And the rest of the episode can just be a series of these moments and gags. Grandad dealing with ruckus at the conference, Riley having to micromanage his own house party, Huey being forced to work a government job. You can have a situation where Jasmine and Huey are in a park and supposed to fill out information, and Huey gets into an argument with someone over their views. Typically what the show would do in this situation is have Huey's words cause chaos or just really be ignored. I'm going for chaos because Boondocks likes fights. They should fight. That's why I'm going with this.
I noticed, Aaron, you like to have a lot of fights in the show.
I do.
Oftentimes when, we sit down and we talk about an episode, Aaron says, yeah, right here they should fight. And I always say, why? And he says, no, because it would be good. And then once again, I get paid a good amount of money, so I just say, oh, cool, fight.
I don't really have to agree with it. That's just kind of what the show does. You can have there be a conflict between Huey and Jasmine about work ethic. Jasmine thinks Huey's being ungrateful. Huey doesn't see why he should compromise his integrity over money, which at its core is what the episode is really entirely about. Grandad has to lie to the general public for a paycheck. Riley doesn't get to do what he wants because he's poor. And Huey, while being a bit self-righteous about it, can't justifiably call himself a revolutionary, snapping pictures, collecting data for the government. In searching the neighborhood, they would eventually find out about Riley's party. Riley's forced to give up his pride and call the police, and the episode ends with the house on fire. Just don't ask how, it just does. The block is hot ends with a fire. I don't see no lighter there. Maybe the police did it. It needs to be defunded anyway, what the fuck. And the episode would end with Huey standing on top of Dorothy, ideally with a guitar, declaring that he isn't interested in compromising what he wants to do for money. And Jasmine snaps one final picture of him, mirroring Fooly Cooley's ending, like a bunch of this video. It would then seamlessly transition into episodes like Breaking Grandad or Freedom Land, as Huey's character would presumably already have the vigor inside of him. There's nothing retired about making bombs, man. There's a moment in season 4, once again, in the Siri episode where it reintroduces Huey and Riley as a notorious domestic terrorist and a public menace.
These are my 2 idiot grandchildren, Huey and Riley.
Yes, the visionary domestic terrorist and the gangster mastermind, also known as the fundraiser.
She does work.
This is just something they're re-stressing from season 3, but again, seeing as season 4 as a soft reboot is a perfect opportunity to establish in the minds of the new audience who these characters are and why they're so infamous. You know, outside of very few things, that's honestly how I feel season 4 could have been improved. To sum up, 1, it needed to do more of its characters. With the absence of Carl Jones, Ed and Rami, the world suddenly shrank in size. It needed to re-establish what these characters were and give them space to breathe. Running off that point, it needed to be a bit more creative. Not just visually, but narratively. Grandad's a really good character, but spending the entire season relying on him does him a disservice and flies in the face of what the entire franchise was conceptually about. And lastly, it really did need to be funnier. Like, just funnier scenarios. Like, there's this idea that season 4 had no message and says nothing, poorly rooted in the Aaron Raguda leaving narrative, which couldn't be further from the truth. Every episode in season 4 is about some form of exploitation. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just not that funny. Like, ironically, Aaron does have an interview where he speaks a lot to this idea, whilst also trying to tell those kids that whatever message that you're trying to get across, make sure you're doing it effectively. And that's the whole point when I say my primary job is being funny. The reason I say that is because if I'm not funny, no one's paying attention to anything I'm saying. Just to add to that point, the question of what makes something funny is obviously subjective. I'm not about to tell you the book definition of funny because I don't think I'm that funny. But an element of what makes things funny is an element of surprise. And because the scope is so limited and it falls back on so many tired episode ideas, it doesn't get a lot of opportunities to be funny. You don't have to like my ideas, but I'd like to believe you can at least see some potential in it, pertaining to fleshing out season 4. Maybe you like the idea of taking a Tom and Grandad plot and making it into a Jasmine and Huey plot. Maybe you like the references to the comic strip. Maybe you like the episodes where Riley creates his own conflict and has to resolve them. Maybe you like the idea of Huey being miserable working a government job. Maybe you can think of some stuff Ruckus says at the meeting to make Grandad co-sign. Maybe you just like Fooly Cooley, I don't know. Regardless of where you stand, you can still see something. Season 4's mediocrity is also really frustrating because the conversation over why it's usually reduced to Aaron's involvement, but I don't think that's constructive, especially considering this reboot is following in many similar ways to it, both in narrative and in production. Season 4 is very similar in concept to the proposed idea for the reboot. Like, yeah, the reboot's 3D, but I'm speaking more to the idea of, terrorizing the Freeman home with a political ruckus. Because for 8 long years, the conversation surrounding Season 4's quality hasn't gone anywhere. Not regarding its strengths, its flaws, or whatever. And because of that, it's really difficult to imagine the team is engaged in this conversation themselves. I don't wish poorly on the reboot, but whatever ideas it has, I hope it has the conviction to commit to them and doesn't fall back too hard on popular ideas of what the Boondocks is, and that even includes my own. Because if there's one consistency of the Boondocks, is that whenever it gets caught up in an idea that gravitated to a lot of people, it compromises a part of its identity in the process, and a show with no clear identity is completely set up to fail. Why is the new black just the S word again? Why are we still doing nigger moment jokes? Why is Breaking Grandad just a one-to-one recreation of Breaking Bad's first episode? Why is there so much Grandad and Ruckus in a franchise designed conceptually around children? Why are there so many parodies? Why is Riley so bad in this season? Why are we referencing the comic strip? Why is there a revolution that amounts to nothing? Why is Ed Wunsler here? Why is Stinkmeaner here? Why is anything in this season? Because it's somebody somewhere's idea of what the Boondocks is to people. Look, I'm always going to have my preferences on what the Boondocks should be, but ultimately whatever direction it decides to take, it needs to commit to it, not shamelessly trying to replicate what people once loved. Everyone who worked on the original show was really talented and went on to make some really cool stuff, but the Boondocks can't chase its own tail while pretending to move forward. You can't even chase its own tail while trying to move forward. It can't keep burning parts of its identity that don't immediately stick with people, because you can only burn so much before the only thing left to burn is yourself. Yo, okay, I hope you guys really enjoyed that video. Again, this one took months. It took a little while, but I'm really proud of what we managed to make. It was a huge undertaking, but I'm really happy. Again, support the Patreon, support the Ko-Fi, support the artists involved, incredibly talented people. I don't want to waste too much time. All right, cool, peace. See you in the next thing. The reboot ain't coming. see you for Black Jesus 2.